You know that moment when you're trying to buy concert tickets or log into your email and suddenly you're forced to prove you're human by clicking on pictures of crosswalks? You probably think it's annoying. You probably think it's just there to stop bots from spamming websites, and you're right about that second part. But here's what nobody tells you. Every single time you're identifying fire hydrants or picking out traffic lights, you're doing free labor for some of the most powerful AI companies in the world. Yeah, you read that right. While you're sitting there frustrated, squinting at blurry images, trying to figure out if that tiny sliver of a traffic light pole counts as a traffic light, you're actually training the machines that might one day replace your job. And the craziest part? You're doing it voluntarily. You're doing it millions of times a day. And you're getting absolutely nothing in return except access to a website you were trying to visit anyway. In the next 15 minutes, you're going to understand how CAPTCHA went from a simple security tool to one of the most brilliant crowdsourced AI training operations ever conceived. And once you see what's really happening, you'll never look at that "I'm not a robot" checkbox the same way again. Here's what's really happening behind the scenes. Every major website you visit is under constant attack. We're talking millions of automated bots trying to create fake accounts, scalp concert tickets, spread spam, or steal data. It's like a digital zombie apocalypse happening 24/7 that you never see. So back in the early 2000s, smart people at Carnegie Mellon created something called CAPTCHA. It stands for Completely Automated Public Turing Test to Tell Computers and Humans Apart, which is a hilariously complicated name for what's basically a bouncer at a nightclub asking, "Are you real?" The original idea came from something called the Turing test. Alan Turing, the legendary computer scientist, proposed this thought experiment. If you're talking to something and you can't tell if it's a human or a machine, then the machine has achieved human-level intelligence. CAPTCHA flipped this concept on its head. Instead of testing if machines are smart enough to seem human, it tests if you're human by giving you tasks that machines supposedly can't do. Picture this scenario. It's 2005. You're trying to sign up for a new Gmail account. Suddenly you're staring at a twisted, warped jumble of letters that look like they were written by a drunk spider. You squint, you tilt your head. Is that an O or a Q? Is that even a letter? You type your best guess and hope for the mercy of the internet gods. That was reCAPTCHA version 1. And yeah, it stopped bots pretty effectively. Humans could usually figure it out, even though it was annoying. Computers couldn't read those distorted letters because their optical character recognition wasn't sophisticated enough yet. But here's where things get interesting. The creator of reCAPTCHA, a guy named Louis von Ahn, realized something brilliant. Millions of people were solving these puzzles every single day. That's millions of human hours being spent just to access websites. What if that effort could do something useful instead of just being wasted? So von Ahn had an idea that was either genius or diabolical, depending on how you look at it. He started showing people words from old books that computer scanners couldn't read. Think about the New York Times trying to digitize their entire archive going back to the 1800s. Their scanners would hit weird fonts, faded ink, or smudged pages and just give up. So reCAPTCHA would show you two words. One word the computer already knew, that was the test to verify you're human. The other word, that was a word the computer couldn't figure out from an old book or document. You type both words, and boom, you just helped digitize human knowledge while proving you weren't a bot. Google saw what was happening and bought reCAPTCHA in 2009, and that's when things really took off. Because Google wasn't just interested in digitizing old books anymore, Google was building something much bigger. They were building AI that could see. Think about it this way. Teaching a computer to recognize a stop sign sounds simple, but it's insanely complicated. A stop sign might be photographed from any angle, it might be partially blocked by a tree, it might be covered in snow or graffiti, it might be bright and shiny or old and faded, it might appear in the foreground or tiny in the background. Your brain processes all these variations instantly and goes, yep, that's a stop sign. You learned this when you were like 5 years old and you've done it automatically ever since. But a computer sees pixels, just numbers representing colors. It has no idea what a stop sign is unless someone teaches it. And teaching it means showing it thousands, actually millions of labeled examples. You need humans to look at images and mark which ones contain stop signs and which ones don't. This process is called data labeling or data annotation, and it's incredibly expensive and time-consuming. Enter the new version of reCAPTCHA. Around 2014, Google introduced reCAPTCHA v2. This is when you started seeing those grids of images. Select all squares with traffic lights, click on all the crosswalks, find the fire hydrants, and suddenly, instead of reading distorted text, you're playing what feels like a weird game of I Spy with photos. But here's what you're actually doing. You're teaching Google's AI to see the world. Every single click is a labeled data point. When you click on 8 squares that contain parts of a bus, you're telling Google's machine learning algorithm, this is what a bus looks like in various contexts. When you identify storefronts or bicycles or stairs, you're building the training data for computer vision systems. And this matters because these systems power everything. Google Street View uses this to blur faces and license plates automatically. Self-driving cars use it to identify pedestrians and road signs. Security systems use it to detect suspicious behavior. Content moderation tools use it to find inappropriate images. All of that requires massive amounts of labeled training data. And you're providing it for free every time you want to check your email or buy shoes online. Now, I can already hear what you're thinking. Wait, if I'm labeling data for Google, how does Google know my answers are correct? Great question. Here's how it works. They show you a mix of images. Some of them have already been solved correctly by other users multiple times. Those are the test images that verify you're human and paying attention. But mixed in with those are new images that the AI isn't sure about yet. Your answers on those images get compared with answers from other humans. Once enough people agree that yes, this image contains a motorcycle, that becomes the verified label that goes into the training data. It's like crowdsourcing the truth through consensus. If you and I and 15 other people all agree that an image shows traffic lights, we're probably right. But if you mark something as a traffic light and everyone else marks it as something different, your answer gets thrown out. This system is brilliant because it's self-correcting. No single person has to be perfect. The wisdom of the crowd gets you to the right answer. Let me tell you about something called the Mechanical Turk problem. Not Amazon Mechanical Turk, the original one from the 1700s. There was this famous chess-playing machine that toured Europe and beat human champions. Everyone thought it was an automated marvel. Turns out there was a human chess master hidden inside controlling everything. It was a hoax, but the name stuck around as a metaphor for human intelligence secretly powering what looks like machine intelligence. CAPTCHA is kind of the reverse Mechanical Turk. It looks like a simple security test, but secretly there's a massive AI training operation powered by human intelligence happening inside. Except it's not a hoax, it's an incredibly sophisticated system that benefits from billions of human judgments to make machines smarter. Here's what makes this even more surprising. Google didn't stop there. Around 2017, they rolled out reCAPTCHA v3. This version is invisible. You don't even see it most of the time. No clicking on fire hydrants. No typing distorted words. The site just lets you through. So how does it work? reCAPTCHA v3 is constantly watching how you interact with websites. It analyzes your mouse movements. It tracks how fast you fill out forms. It notices if you move your cursor in perfectly straight lines, which humans never do, but bots often do. It considers how long you've been on the site. It factors in your browsing history and device fingerprint. It's running hundreds of tiny behavioral checks to calculate a probability score of whether you're human or not. The creepy part? It's tracking all this data even when you don't realize it. That little reCAPTCHA badge in the corner of a website means it's analyzing your every move. Most of the time, if you behave like a typical human, you sail right through without even knowing you were being tested. Only when the system isn't sure about you does it actually make you solve one of those image challenges. And even then, it's not just verifying you're human, it's still collecting training data while it's at it. This connects to something even deeper about how AI actually learns. Machine learning models need 3 things to work: computational power, algorithms, and data. For the last decade, computational power has gotten incredibly cheap. Cloud services mean you can rent massive processing power for pennies. The algorithms, those are largely open source now. You can download cutting-edge neural network architectures for free. But the data? High-quality labeled data is still expensive and hard to get. It's often called the new oil of the AI economy. And CAPTCHA solved this problem in the most elegant way possible. Instead of paying humans to label millions of images, which would cost tens of millions of dollars, Google made the labeling process a requirement for accessing the internet. They turned a necessary security measure into an AI training pipeline. It's like if your gym membership required you to generate electricity on a stationary bike, and the gym sold that electricity back to the grid. You came there to work out anyway, so why not capture that energy? Except in this case, you came to use the website anyway, so why not capture your intelligence? But here's where things get really interesting. This isn't just about stop signs and traffic lights anymore. CAPTCHA has evolved to include all kinds of challenges. Sometimes you're identifying animals. Sometimes you're verifying text in natural images like street signs or storefronts. Each variation targets a different AI capability that companies want to develop. When you're identifying crosswalks, you're training self-driving car systems. When you're picking out storefronts, you're training mapping and local search algorithms. When you're finding bicycles or motorcycles, you're training object detection for traffic management systems. Every different task corresponds to a real commercial application where labeled data is valuable. And if you think that's wild, check this out. Some security researchers have found CAPTCHAs that ask you to rotate objects to the correct orientation. Others ask you to identify which image is different from the others. These aren't just testing if you're human. They're training AI on spatial reasoning and pattern recognition capabilities that go way beyond just identifying objects in photos. Now, this next pattern is particularly sneaky because it reveals something most people never think about. The entire arms race between security and AI has created this weird paradox. CAPTCHA was designed to give humans tasks that computers can't do. But every time you solve a CAPTCHA, you're literally training computers to do that exact task. You're teaching the machines to beat the test that was designed to stop machines. And that's exactly what's happened. By 2015, Google's own AI could solve distorted text CAPTCHAs with over 99% accuracy. That's better than humans. The tests we created to prove we're not machines. Machines can now pass it better than we can. So we had to move on to image recognition challenges. But guess what? As millions of people solve those every day, the AI gets better and better at those too. It's like building a higher fence to keep out intruders while simultaneously teaching the intruders how to climb fences. Eventually, your security measure defeats itself. And when that happens, you have to invent a new kind of fence and start the cycle over again. This matters because we're approaching a future where machines might be better than humans at every task we can think of to distinguish ourselves from machines. And then what? How do you prove you're human when machines can pass every human test? It's not just a technical challenge, it's almost philosophical. What makes us human if machines can perfectly mimic human behavior? Let me blow your mind for a second. The uncomfortable truth is that CAPTCHA isn't really about security anymore. Sure, it still blocks some bots, but sophisticated bot operators with enough resources can defeat it. They can use CAPTCHA solving services where they pay actual humans in developing countries pennies to solve challenges. Or they can use AI models trained on, wait for it, the same data that CAPTCHA helped create. It's a circular game. So what's really happening is this. CAPTCHA has become a data tax. You pay for access to websites, not with money, but with your cognitive labor, your pattern recognition skills, your ability to identify objects in images. And that payment goes straight into training the next generation of AI systems that will power trillion-dollar industries. Think about it. Every major tech company wants better computer vision, better natural language processing, better recommendation algorithms. But training data is expensive to produce. So instead of hiring teams of people to label images, they make you do it for free as a condition of using their services. It's brilliant, it's efficient, and it's completely invisible to most users. This isn't because tech companies are evil. It's because they understand something fundamental about how digital ecosystems work. If you can design a system where user behavior naturally generates the data you need, you can scale infinitely without increasing costs proportionally. Facebook did this with social connections. YouTube did this with viewing habits. Google did this with search queries. And reCAPTCHA does this with human perception. What they don't tell you is the real value exchange happening. You think you're trading 30 seconds of your time to access a website. What you're actually trading is proprietary human intelligence that takes years of evolution to develop, the ability to instantly recognize patterns and make contextual judgments. That intelligence gets encoded into AI systems that will generate billions of dollars in value, and you got nothing except permission to continue browsing. And this is the reason why CAPTCHA persists, even though it's often inaccurate and frustrating. Ever notice how sometimes you clearly click on all the traffic lights, but it still tells you to try again? That's not a bug. That's the system being unsure about edge cases and needing more human input. That tiny sliver of a traffic light pole, does it count? The system doesn't know yet. It needs more data, so it makes you and 100 other people weigh in until it reaches consensus. The ripple effects of this system are massive. The computer vision AI trained on CAPTCHA data doesn't just help Google. It becomes part of cloud services that other companies can use. It gets incorporated into products across industries. Your free labor clicking on crosswalks ends up powering facial recognition systems, automated content moderation, medical imaging analysis, agricultural monitoring, and dozens of other applications. The data you generated becomes part of the infrastructure of modern AI. Let me tell you about Maya. Maya's a busy professional trying to book a flight during her lunch break. She gets hit with a CAPTCHA asking her to identify all the squares with buses. She's in a hurry, so she clicks through quickly. She makes a few mistakes because some of the images are ambiguous. Is that a bus or a large truck? The system flags her as potentially suspicious because she's going too fast and making errors. So it gives her another CAPTCHA, then another. Now she spent 5 minutes clicking on traffic lights and crosswalks, and she's frustrated because she just wants to buy a plane ticket. What Maya doesn't realize is that her mistakes are actually useful to the system. When images are ambiguous, disagreement among users is valuable information. It tells the AI, this is a hard case that requires more sophisticated understanding. Meanwhile, Maya feels like she's failing some arbitrary test when really she's providing exactly the nuanced human judgment the system needs. And here's what Maya doesn't understand. The reason she got multiple CAPTCHAs is probably because she's behind a VPN or using privacy-focused browser settings. The system doesn't have her browsing history to verify she's human, so it falls back on the image challenges. In other words, the more you protect your privacy online, the more free AI training labor you have to do. It's a privacy penalty disguised as a security check. Now compare that to Marcus. Marcus uses Chrome. He's logged into his Google account. He has location services enabled. He's been browsing normally for the past hour. When Marcus hits a site with reCAPTCHA, he sees the "I'm not a robot" checkbox. He clicks it. It immediately turns into a green check mark. He's through in 1 second. No image challenges at all. Marcus didn't have to do anything because Google's invisible tracking already verified. He's human based on his behavior patterns. The system knows his mouse movements. It knows his typing rhythm. It's built a behavioral profile that says, this is definitely a human. So Marcus sails through while Maya gets interrogated. Notice the difference? It's not about how well you can identify fire hydrants. It's about how much data you've already given Google. Same exact website, same exact security requirements, but completely different experiences based on how much the system already knows about you. That's the CAPTCHA paradox. The more privacy you want, the more cognitive labor you do. The more data you give up, the more convenient your experience becomes. You're being incentivized to sacrifice privacy for convenience, and most people don't even realize it's happening. Here's what most people don't realize about what's actually going on. The entire CAPTCHA system is built on a fundamental assumption that human cognition has value precisely because it's different from machine cognition. Your brain evolved over millions of years to recognize patterns instantly, to understand context, to handle ambiguity. That's not something you learned in school. It's baked into your neural architecture from countless generations of ancestors who survived because they could quickly distinguish a friend from a threat or food from poison. And what tech companies figured out is that this evolutionary intelligence is the missing ingredient in their AI systems. They've got the computing power, they've got the algorithms. What they need is your brain's pattern recognition abilities encoded into training data. So they found a way to extract it from you without you even realizing what you're giving away. It's not actually about stopping bots at all anymore. Modern bot operators can defeat CAPTCHA pretty easily if they want to. It's about harvesting human intelligence at scale for the lowest possible cost. The people who succeed at building AI aren't the ones with the best algorithms. Everyone has access to good algorithms now. They're the ones who have access to the most high-quality labeled data. And once you see it this way, everything changes. The question isn't whether CAPTCHA keeps you safe from bots. The question is whether you're okay with being an unpaid data annotator for one of the most valuable AI training operations in history. Because every time you click, "I'm not a robot," you're not just proving your humanity, you're teaching machines to be more like you. So here's what we've uncovered. CAPTCHA started as a clever security tool, a digital bouncer checking IDs at the door. Then it evolved into something much more sophisticated, a way to digitize old books by turning human verification into productive work. But then it transformed into something even bigger, a massive distributed AI training platform that turns billions of security checks into high-quality labeled data for computer vision systems. We've got this pattern where security needs create opportunities for data collection. Plus, there's the convenience trade-off where privacy protections trigger more labor. This all connects to a fundamental shift in how companies build AI. They're not paying for human intelligence anymore. They're designing systems that extract it for free from everyday interactions. And the really sneaky part? The better the AI gets at solving these challenges, the harder the challenges have to become to still distinguish humans from machines. Which means you end up training even more sophisticated AI capabilities. It's a self-perpetuating cycle that only stops when machines can perfectly mimic human cognition for every task we can think of. This isn't your fault. You didn't choose to be part of a global AI training workforce. You're just trying to access websites you need for work, or life, or entertainment. The system is designed to extract value from you at the moment when you're most motivated to comply, when you're trying to do something else. And the CAPTCHA is just an obstacle to get past. That's not a bug in the system. That's the core design. But now that you understand how the patterns work, you can't unknow it. You see the real transaction happening. Yes, CAPTCHA helps stop some bots and spam, but its primary function has become something entirely different, converting human perception into machine learning training data at a scale and efficiency that would be impossible any other way. The question isn't whether you can avoid CAPTCHA. You can't. It's woven into the fabric of the modern internet. The question is whether you'll recognize what's happening when that grid of images pops up. Because now you know you're not just proving you're human. You're teaching machines to see. You're building the training data for AI systems that will reshape entire industries. And you're doing it one fire hydrant at a time. So next time you're squinting at blurry images, trying to figure out if that corner pixel counts as part of a crosswalk, ask yourself, am I passing a security test, or am I working an unpaid shift in the world's largest AI training program? Because once you see what CAPTCHA really is, every click looks different. You're not fighting the machines anymore. You're teaching them. And the skills you're teaching them, those are the exact skills they'll eventually use to make humans unnecessary for that task. Welcome to the future, where proving you're human means helping machines become more human than you. Wild, right?